Big Sills. We are locked and loaded. A ton of content today and a history lesson on your Eagles. I think some of you are going to be very shocked with the history of your drafting since 2000. By the way, we're getting closer to the NFL draft, so always remember this. You're now in the land of misinformation. So some of the stuff that you're listening to now that's out there publicly are agents, general managers, coaches, personnel people trying to lead you away from actually what they're getting ready to do. Okay? So you've got to take everything kind of with a grain of salt right now. When you hear someone go, I don't know, this guy's really falling off the board, you're like, all right, well, I don't know if he's really falling off the board. But hang in there. We're here to set you straight. By the way, I do want to expand on something I said yesterday on Jerome Brown and Jalen Carter. Always remember something when I make a comparison for you guys. It's more of a comparison. I don't know if Jalen Carter's ever going to live up to the potential that he has shown so much so far as what he did at Georgia. I don't know that. I have no idea. But coming out of college, he's got the skill sets of Jerome Brown. Some of you were offended. Some of you weren't. Some of you looked at the comparison. Relax. It's skill set. It's a comparison so that you can see that this kid is this good. Don't expand it beyond that. Don't be like some organizations and overcook it. This guy shows the same kind of football talent that Jerome had when he came out of Miami. And what's crazy, don't ever talk to me ever, any of you, on my Twitter page or anywhere about Jerome. You don't know him. You weren't around him. You weren't friends with him. Don't ever tell me anything about something about Jerome Brown. You don't know him. I grew up with him. I played next to him. We stayed in each other's homes. We were dear friends. There's no way in the world I would ever disrespect his memory. You know I don't. Don't act like it. It's unbecoming and stupid. Okay, just shut the hell up. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know how it ended, and I know what happened with him, Jalen Carter. Relax. That's a whole different side of the conversation. Just relax. And this is why I said yesterday, if Jerome Brown was sitting at 10, would you draft him or not? All I asked. Would you draft him? Of course you would. It's worth the risk. Look, I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'll get to that in a minute. Now, I'm going to do something here, and I did something prior to. And by the way, some of you probably have met him. Some of you probably have some type of relationship with Jerome. I'm not disrespecting your relationship with him if you had a chance to meet him. I'm not at all. Okay? Just some of you that have never say something to me about disrespecting Jerome. That's when I know right then and there you've never known the guy. Just don't talk to me like that. That's one of the things I am pretty sensitive about is my relationship with Jerome Brown. So if some of you have had an opportunity to meet him in the past and you had a chance to be around him, I'm sure it was a great experience because he's a great dude. Okay? He's a great dude. Unlike another Kane I won't name, he's great when you get an opportunity to meet him and shake his hand. Okay? I won't name that Kane, but when you met Jerome, you were glad you met him. When you met this other Kane, you regretted meeting him. No Kane on Kane hate here. I just not going to go down that line and start another war with that I don't need to. So we're going to leave that alone. I think you probably have an idea who it is. Anyway, I want to go into the history of your football team since 2000 and since Howie Roseman's been in the building and involved with personnel. And I broke it down by every single position. Now I got to remember something because Tone kind of was right here. So let me do this. Dean, 5, that's 20. Let's go here. Yeah, 13. Okay. So that it is the second. It is, Tone, the second if you put them all together, and I think we should put them all together here. Howie Vision. I broke down every single position that they have drafted. I didn't go by round. I went by position since 2000. What do you think is the least drafted position since 2000 in Philadelphia? What would you think? It's tight end. Since 2000, you've drafted 8 of them. The next position are quarterbacks, believe it or not. You've drafted 9 of them. 9 quarterbacks you've drafted since 2000? I even wrote the list down. Wow. Whew. I mean, you talk about a train wreck of a list. The next position are defensive tackles. You've drafted 15. 15 DTs since 2000. I think you're going to be shocked. You have drafted since 2000 16 running backs. 16 running backs since 2000. Would this number shock you? Since 2000, the Philadelphia Eagles have drafted 23 linebackers. You talk about massive failure. They've drafted 23 linebackers since 2000. And there's not one that's worth a shit. 23 linebackers. 23 linebackers since 2000. Wow. Dude, you get an F for that. That's an F for a grade. 15 DTs. Because of Fletcher? C? Quarterbacks? F. No, because of Jalen. C? One guy out of 9? I'll be kind today because it's Holy Week. Tight ends? That's a pretty good position. You guys have been great at that. I'll give you a B. I'll give you a B. Tight ends, 8 of them. Over half of those guys have been great. Okay? McNabb. McNabb and what was it? McNabb was McNabb draft? What did McNabb first year? Wasn't he in like 1999 or 98? Wasn't he in what? McNabb wasn't drafted in he was drafted before 2000. So no, it's still, I guess, a C. I guess a C. Foles? Okay, let me go on here. Your linebacking drafting has been an F. How about this one? You have drafted 24 wide receivers since 2000. 24 wide receivers. What would you give the Eagle grade for 24 wideouts since 2000? What would you give them? I'll ask you, what would you give the Eagles as a grade of 24 wide receivers? What would you say this? McNabb was not drafted in 2000, dude. What would you give the Eagle drafting for wideouts? 24 of them. A C? Really? 24 wide receivers you've drafted. Tyler, I don't know yet. I'm not sure. I'm waiting to hear some news. I'll know more. I've been asked to. 24 wide receivers. I agree. I think it's a D. Defensive ends. You've drafted 25 defensive ends since 2000. What would you give the Eagles for defensive ends as a grade? 25 of them you've drafted since 2000s. What would you do? Brandon Graham and then who? Sweat. Okay. What would you give that grade? Dude, this is a lot of volume. To get two guys right out of 25? I don't know. Dude, unless you drafted Lawrence Taylor, I don't know. I mean, 25 guys. I can name you two dudes that are worth the shit. Do you guys know the number one position drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles is defensive backs? Now, look, here. Tone's right, because I put safeties and corners, so I think you got to put O-line together too. Centers, guards, and tackles. That comes out to 33. 33, you've had future Hall of Famers, great linemen. They get an A for that. You get an A for that. Really, really, really tremendous drafting. Franchise thought that the O-line was the number one drafted position in Eagle history. The number one position drafted in Eagle history are DBs. 37 of them. And can you name me since 2000 your best DBs that you've drafted? 37. 37. And the entire secondary right now is almost non-homegrown. I mean, those are terrible percentages. They're terrible percentages. So if you get two guys out of 37 players since 2000 have been drafted by the Eagles. So Brian goes Lito and Sheldon. Okay? Out of 37 secondary guys you drafted. Whew. Man. Yeah. I got to tell you, man, that's an F. That's an F just in volume. F. I'm not talking about guys if they panned out and they were 6th or 7th rounders and turned out to be stars. I'm talking about the most drafted positions in Philadelphia Eagle history are DBs, O-line, defensive ends, wide receivers, and believe it or not, linebackers. You get an F for DBs. O-line and A, defensive ends, I'll be kind again because it's Holy Week. C-. Wide receivers, F. Linebackers, F. So you're getting ready for a draft where you're not good at anything except O-line. What would make you think they're not going to take an O-line with one of the first rounders or trade out of it? There's no way. The safest pick for the Eagles is to stay in the O-line. They're not good in anything in drafting. They're not a good organization in drafting. Don't let anybody in Philly tell you that guy's good in drafting. His track record since 2000, being involved in personnel decisions and being involved in the front office, that front office does not draft well. Look at the volume. Where in the world do you think? Where's this list? Let's take a look at the quarterbacks. Since 2000, A.J. Feely, Andy Hall, Kevin Cobb, Mike Kafka, Nick Foles, Matt Barkley, Carson Wentz, Clayton Thorson. Is that the Delaware kid? And Hurts. This is a shit list too. Dude, I was under some impression they actually did a good job in the draft. You can't show me anywhere that I just pointed out that makes me feel comfortable in 3 weeks they're going to land on anybody outside of an O-lineman. If Howie drafts an O-lineman, perfect. Perfect. Overdrafted Jordan Davis yesterday and took a flyer on the Kobe Dean. Just Mike, I'm not talking about playoff appearances. You build your team through free agency, dude. You don't build your team through the draft. You're a free agency team built on 1-2-year deals. You're not built through the draft. You haven't got a DB right. You've drafted nearly 40 players since 2000, and you haven't landed on really anything. Your O-line, you're an A. Yeah, again, 37 DBs, 33 O-linemen, 25 ends, 24. Your wide receiving drafting is pathetic. And you've actually drafted 23 linebackers since 2000. Where in your mind do you think that they're going to find a guy in the draft at linebacker when they've never? I mean, this is some – look at the and then you've only got 6 picks this year. What do you think the chances of the Eagles landing on somebody that's great this year? What do you think the chances of them landing on somebody that will help the football team? After giving you the history, dude, and by the way, this is not an opinion. This is actually what you've done in the draft. Okay? This is actually what you've done in the draft. So again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not even giving you an opinion here. I asked you guys the grades. Okay? This is not an opinion. This is the actions of the organization. Clint goes, the last 2 years, the draft has been excellent. You got nothing out of last year's draft, dog. What are you talking about? What player was an impact player off that draft last year? Help me out. What are you talking about? How do you know that? They haven't even played. One guy was overdrafted well, not massively. What are you talking about? That's a perception that Clint has. It's not true. Cam Jurgens didn't play. Shit, the only guy that was truly a guy that you got anything out of was the backup tight end. Bears, Dan acts like every team. I'm not talking about every team. Bears? Are you kidding me? The Bears are awful, but they're awful in free agency too. The Bears haven't got the quarterback position right since Sid Luckman. That's 70 years ago. So, again, all right, I'll tell you one organization that gets the draft right are the Steelers. They get the draft right. That organization is built on the draft. The foundation of the Steelers and why they're the gold standard in drafting and developing is Pittsburgh. That's the reason they've had 3 coaches since 1969. January 17th, 1969, Chuck Noll walks in the building, changed the culture of the Pittsburgh Steelers for the Rooney family forever. Okay? Hey, King, I hope he does. So tell me, okay? Tell me, don't you now agree that the best bet for the Eagles is to draft an O-lineman? It's the safest. It's the safest because they're great at it. Every other position, their top 5 drafted positions, they've drafted, like I said, nearly 40 defensive backs. Landed on 2. 2. O-line has been sensational. Defensive ends, 25 of them. 2 in 23 years. This is a 23-year, well, coming up 23 years at the latter part of April. It'll be 23 years. You've drafted 40 dudes at DB. No wonder they signed those corners to those contracts. They had to. They weren't picking Gonzalez. Dude, their picking of corners and DBs is as bad as wide receivers. Devontae Smith, D-Jacks, sure. But you've drafted nearly 25 of them. 2 out of 25? You don't get that. The Steelers get that position wide receiver right all the time. It's a legendary franchise. Antonio Brown, I think, was a 5th rounder. Hines Ward wasn't a 1st rounder. He was like a 3rd or something like that. I mean, Stallworth was a late round guy. The Pickens kid from Georgia was a 2nd rounder. The Steelers get that position right. You want to know who drafts wideouts right? The Pittsburgh Steelers draft them. What's really wild about Pittsburgh, I would have always thought that the Steelers had the better history of drafting O-linemen than the Eagles. That's not true. Okay, that's not true. Not since Sirianni has come in. I think he's had a much bigger effect on the draft. Who? Sirianni? Has no say in the draft. Where did you get that from? When Nick Sirianni was introduced as head football coach of the Eagles, he had to introduce himself to his coaching staff. He said it at the Super Bowl. What are you talking about? Half the staff was put in place before he even got the job. Vet goes, yeah, you're right. The Steelers are rated 3rd overall in best draft since 2000. The Eagles are rated 17th. Number 1 is Baltimore. Sounds right with Ozzie. Hey, by the way, Vet, I really don't think DaCosta has done a really good job at retooling that defense on that side of the football either. I think that's why Ozzie is still in the building. Green Bay is 2nd. Do you know the Green Bay Packers haven't drafted a wide receiver in 35 years in the 1st round? Okay? You know why? They've had 2 quarterbacks over the last 30 years. Favre and Rodgers. They leave it up to them to develop them. When you got a quarterback, you don't have to draft you don't have to draft top flight wideouts. They'll make them into them. Look what Brady did for 19 years in New England. Who was the best wide receiver that Tom Brady won a Super Bowl with? Can you name me one? Name me the best wide receiver that Tom Brady won a Super Bowl with. Name me one guy that was a top flight wideout in New England. Name me one. Can you? Can you name me one wide receiver that Tom Brady won a Super Bowl with in New England that was a top flight and a high draft choice? Name me one. You can't. You can't. They're the Amendolas of the world, the Edelmans, the Deion Branches, the Troy Browns, who doubled both ways. They couldn't find one guy, but they didn't need to. Brady was getting a guy from Worcester to come in there and play wide receiver. They didn't need him. Now the game has changed. The game has changed. NFL has changed. From the time Brady came into the league to today, the wide receiver core is more essential. I think it used to just be Christmas balls on a tree. Now it's part of the foundation of the tree. You've got to have top flight guys. Okay? You've got to have top flight guys. Tom Brady never won a Super Bowl in New England, ever, with a top flight wideout. That's a fact. He wasn't highly recruited, but was Wes Welker decent? He had 5 1,000-yard seasons through his 13 years in the NFL. Yeah. The history of Wes Welker, he was in San Diego, then went to Miami as a special teams guy. Then his last 2 stints were with Brady and Peyton Manning. Gee, you think that had any effect on his 13-year career? He was dog shit in San Diego, and he was a special teams guy in Miami. They bring him up to New England. He goes with the GOAT, has 100-catch seasons. He wasn't a high-profile guy. And then what does he do? He's smart. He sticks with a high-profile quarterback and Peyton Manning. You're damn right. He knew. You think Wes Welker's putting numbers up with Ryan Tannehill? He ain't doing that. Dude, these guys, these big-time wideouts that you pay $25 million to, it's a joke, unless it's a Justin Jefferson or an A.J. Brown. DK Metcalf, I throw in there, D-Hop. But look at the price tag you got to put on him. Dude, if I'm going to go cheap, you can win. Dude, Nate, who won the Super Bowl? Juju Smith-Schuster was the top wide receiver in KC. Why? Well, Mahomes. Brady went to a team that was stacked with Mike Evans. You think Cooper Kupp was some highly sought-after kid when he came out of college? Cooper Kupp had average numbers as a wide receiver until Stafford got there and they had a decent signal caller and a decent play caller. Can't have Jeff Fisher in control of your career. This all comes down to the quarterback. You know why the wide receiving core failed in Philadelphia? Because the quarterback list sucked. Think about that. There's no coincidence. Your wide receivers have sucked so bad because your quarterback list sucks. It goes hand in hand. That's why you've never had 1,000. That's why you've never had a 100-catch guy in your organization's history. You find a QB. You know, Andy Reid knows this now. You know what he knows? I don't need to pay a guy $25 million. How about this luxury Kansas City has over Philadelphia? Philadelphia needs to pay a guy $25 million to try to win a Super Bowl at wide receiver. Andy knows he don't have to. He'll get some dude off the street like Juju Smith-Schuster, go win a Super Bowl. What a luxury. What a luxury Kansas City. Kansas City doesn't have. They don't even have to waste a first rounder on wide receiver for Mahomes. They probably will, though. Now, they probably need more help in the O-line. Can't have a $50 million quarterback and a $2 offensive line. Can't. My number one objective, if I'm Kansas City and I'm Veaching them guys, I got to get O-lineman to replace Orlando Brown. I don't give a shit about a wide receiver in Kansas City. I'll win with Juju Smith-Schuster. Shit, they could probably win with Zach Pascal. That's how they look at it now. They got rid of the greatest deep threat in the game and said, I don't care. I'm not paying that guy $25 million. And that's like what Tone says. That's a premium position. Well, when you've got D, dude, you don't need to pay it. I guarantee you Kansas City's going right down the same line that New England did for 19 years. They ain't bringing in big-time wideouts. DeAndre Hopkins is never playing in Kansas City. They ain't paying that kind of money. They don't need to. Why give that position money when you got the GOAT of the modern day right now in Mahomes? They don't need to do that. What a freaking luxury. How do you think that Eagle offense would look without AJ on it? A lot different. Eagles aren't going anywhere without AJ Brown. and that's no shade on Devontae. But get this. You guys are worried about who's going to play the third wide receiver position in an organization who doesn't draft well at the position. Kansas City doesn't even have a number 2. They don't have a number 3. They don't even have a number 1. That's because the signal caller and the head coach, they've now figured it out. Once you've got that guy, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter in Kansas City who plays wide out. They need to get wideouts. No, they don't. They beat you with a cast-off from Pittsburgh, who when Antonio Brown left, they thought he was going to be the one. He was a good 2 in Pittsburgh. But then when he got the role of 1, he bombed. I mean, knock what off? I'm talking to you about how teams are looking at this coming draft and how the Eagles, when you look at their drafting since 2000, outside of O-line, wow. You hit Mulata in the 7th. Yes. Kelsey, 6th round. Right. I get it. But the team is not built around the draft. 23 linebackers? Can you name one that was really a great all-pro? Out of 23 guys. Shit, the team that had last year, you had 2 free agents. Unrestricted UFA was TJ Edwards, which basically means he fell into your lap. The defensive back conversation, dude, you guys really want to take and think that you think you're going to trust the Eagle organization in drafting a DB when they've drafted nearly 40 guys in 23 years. You feel comfortable with that. Good luck, man. That's not good trends. That's why, again, O-line, trade out of 10. If the desired players aren't there, get out of 10. The chances of you screwing 10 up are higher than you screwing 30 up. What you're trying to do is get a starter out of this, not wishful thinking. You've got to play the averages. What gives me the best chance of success? The 10th pick or the 30th pick? Did it ever wonder why the 49ers under Bill Walsh and under all those guys who were building that dynasty back in the day were always winning Super Bowls in the NFC Championship, but they were picking down in the 30s? Why? Because they never overdrafted. They never overdrafted or overspent. They didn't have to because guys fell where they were. Do you understand as the draft gets down closer to the end of the first round, players start to align better on where their real value is? If KC loses Kelsey, they have no one. Travis is their number 1. He goes down, KC loses. Okay. Well, tight end has become a major focal point, vet. It's become a major focal point in the NFL. Wide receiving core is not a major priority in Kansas City. You've got to be functional and a good player. You don't have to be exceptional because the quarterback is exceptional. He's exceptional. Howie thinks first round should be steals. I do too. Actually, parlay. I think first rounders, I think they should be starters. I'm drafting in the first round to try to find starters. If they happen to turn into Pro Bowlers, cherry on top of the cake. Cherry on top of the cake. Look at what Jesus says. We have way more talent than Kansas City. You do, except for the coach and the quarterback. Tight end's better, but yours is really good. They have a better defensive tackle than you. That's it. Why didn't you beat them? The best chance of success is Robinson at 10. This also helps Hurts, as you say. Dual threat. I like that, Marshall. We're going to get to the topic here in a minute. And the best tight end in the game. Okay. So they got 3 players. They got 2 players. So you're trying to tell me then, Jeremiah, the Chiefs beat you with 2 players with all your talent? That's an underachieving Super Bowl then. And you lost two starters now coming back. They can lose anybody. As long as they don't lose Mahomes and Travis Kelce, they're going to beat everybody. So wait a minute. Those 2 guys beat the Eagles. Okay? That's what you're saying, Jeremiah. You got more talent than KC, but yet you couldn't stop him in the second half. And you couldn't you couldn't hang with him in the second half. That's what happened. Patriots need a cornerback. Hey, by the way, if you take a look at the New England Patriots, especially over the last 4 years, 5 years, I would think that the Patriots, the reason that they're falling off the cliff is because they're not drafting well. They lost Brady. Once they lost Brady, they lost the autonomy to make mistakes in the draft. And Belichick has been making mistakes in the draft. The Arizona State wide receiver was a complete disaster. When you have the right quarterback, you can make mistakes in the draft because the quarterback's going to cover it. He's going to cover it. You know why? Mahomes throws you out of trouble. He throws you out of trouble. Look at that shitty wide receiving core that they had in Kansas City last year. And a rookie running back. And they won the Super Bowl with lesser talent than you. Sorry to say, but that's the facts. I'm watching 1 minute where, like, let's take Sub-Zero from. I'm not sure what that means. I can't. Jalen was exceptional in the Super Bowl. I wouldn't put the word exceptional in the Super Bowl. I would say he was great. He was. You can't make mistakes in that ball game to cost your team points. Now, again, I've never killed him for that, and I'm not going to. But he cost his team points. Against a lesser team, mind you. Again, I'm not killing him for it. It was a mistake, but he cost his team points. How many quarterbacks outside of Burrow and Mahomes can throw you out of trouble? I think the guy in Buffalo can. I think the guy in Los Angeles can. I think the guy this year with Sean Payton in Denver can. I think those guys can. Those guys are pure, prolific passers. They're pure arms, arm talent. Jalen's coming along. Again, and no disrespect. I mean, his dual threat ability makes him one of the most unique players in the game. But if you look down the board, Geno Smith had a better passing season than Jalen did a year ago. I wouldn't consider Jalen a prolific passer. I wouldn't consider Geno Smith a prolific passer. I would consider Jalen one of the most unique talents in the game, like I would Lamar Jackson. And again, I think Jalen's smarter at seeing the game more than Lamar is. I do. And we're going to find out more about him because more is going to be expected of him. Okay? More is going to be expected of him this year as the defense gets ready to mature. Again, what I wanted to point out to you is this is all aiming towards the Eagles taking an O-lineman in the draft and trading out of it. People keep saying trade the 30th pick. Why would you trade the pick that gives you the best chance to find a starter? The 10th pick is more of a gamble. Shit, you didn't even get the 13th pick right last year. And now, again, by the way, I never said that Jordan wasn't a first-round selection. I just said you should have took him in the 20s. 13th pick, I'm looking for a pass rusher there. I'm looking for a starter at 13. Not me having to go out on the street midway through the season and find two 35-year-old defensive tackles to fix my run defense. That's not what I'm looking at. So again, watch this. So if the Eagles draft a DB at 10, nearly 40 guys in 23 years they've drafted at that position. It's been an abomination of failure. Defensive ends, you get an edge rusher. Look, I'll tell you one thing, though, and I will give him credit for this, and I'll say this to you about, I think Howie is a better, you know what? How about this? I think Andy Reid is a better head coach in Kansas City now, all the things that he learned in Philadelphia. I also happen to think that Howie's a better general manager since he was put in the broom closet. I think he listens more now. I think he's more open to, as we said yesterday, departmentalizing everything and putting everything in a box so that it's easy for everyone to know their role. Okay? I think the difference this time around for Howie Roseman, I think everyone knows their role and everyone's got a defined role in that organization, and he's departmentalized it a lot with more clarity. I think people know exactly what's expected of them now. Before, it was an ideology. And I think that's smart. When people know their role, you know, I say this to people all the time about one of the greatest things on the planet about one of my favorite teams of all time, that Jordan team. You know why I love the Jordan team? Rodman knew his role. He played defense, tremendous rebounder. Pippen was the best Robin on the planet. Kerr and Paxson knew their roles as perimeter players. Weddington and Cartwright, all those guys knew. Even Tony Kukoc, they all knew their roles because they were defined by Phil. Phil defined the roles, and Jordan executed them on the floor. It's one of the greatest teams of all time on everyone knowing what your job is and what you were expected to do. Those are the great teams when you can define roles. And I think they define roles now in Philly. That's why, look, by the way, when I'm pointing out the draft, I could probably go into free agency and show you that he has been an absolute superstar. I'm talking Roseman in free agency. I'm talking about the event that's coming up in 3 weeks. That's the draft. He's not great at it. He gets lucky. This is a history of luck in the draft. 40 DBs. I'm expecting them to draft a really great player. When have they ever? I'm expecting them to draft a great O-lineman. That I am. I'm expecting them to draft a great wide receiver. Why? Because they got Devontae and Djax right. Okay. Jeremy Maclin, okay. But you've drafted 25 wideouts. 25 wideouts in 23 years. And you got 3 right. I don't know. I wouldn't put that high on the percentage list. Again, like Tone says, you just can't have Devontae Smith as your name on your test and say you passed it for the last 23 years. Give me the OT from Northwestern, Skrinoski. I think that's where, to me, it's the safest pick for them. Plus, you've got the best teacher in the building and the offensive line coach. Okay? Ray says, I still think we win the NFL. Ray, this is not anything to do with what I'm saying the roster looks like right now. I'm talking about the draft coming up in 3 weeks. And I get where you're going because the NFC is where it is. And I don't think you have to play spectacular defense any longer. I think you have to play functional defense. Okay. Could be. I'll tell you this, you're in the top 5 teams in the NFC by far. Unless Dallas gets Derrick Henry, which they're kicking the tires on this. You know that I know Stephen Jones and everyone in that Cowboy organization. They're talking to Tennessee. I'm getting Derrick Henry. So that's something Howie has to look at. Here, my opinion, Dallas is getting Bijan Robinson or Derrick Henry. And I'm hoping they get BJ then, if I had to take the lesser of the two. Because at least it's a gamble whether or not he's going to be a star in the NFL. I already know the guy in Tennessee is. That guy's going to Canton. That guy's going to Canton. Okay? He's going to Canton. He's 28. He had 1,500 yards. People go, well, this guy's running out of... No, he's not. With better talent around him? What's the best talent Derrick Henry's ever had around him in that Tennessee offense? A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown wasn't on that football team last year, and he still had almost 1,600 yards. Come on, man. You put him on a team with some decent talent and a halfway decent quarterback, you're going to go some places with him. You want BJ? I'm going to get to that here in a minute. So again, you guys are thinking that I'm giving you an opinion on your draft history. I'm not giving you an opinion on your draft history. I'm pointing it out to you. I'm pointing it out. It's not real successful. 40 defensive backs. No wonder the entire secondary is mainly built on free agents and trades. There's no coincidence to that the linebacking core. You've drafted 23 linebackers in 23 years heading into this draft. There's no coincidence to this. Why they're all free agents or trades. I mean, they're not very good at picking quarterbacks. Foles is maybe the greatest substitute teacher in the history of the NFL. That's about all he ever was and will ever be. Hurts may save this list. Wentz was a bomb. Barkley and Kafka and Cobb and who's Andy Hall? Who's Clayton Thorson? And some go, well, still, some of these are latter round picks. Let's see. Cobb was a second rounder. Foles was a third. Wentz was the second pick in the draft. Andy Hall was a sixth rounder. So was Brady. All right. I want to get to the topic now. It's enough of this. I got 2 players. And I'm going to take it with the notion that the 10th pick he's going to be the pick that everyone so wants to use instead of the 30th. The 30th gives you more chance of success in finding a starter. Unfortunately, people, because they see the 10th pick, it's more of a value pick. Yeah, it's a value pick to build your team and get more draft choices. Most people look at the 30th pick and see what? Top of the second. You're not going to get a lot of volume down there at 30, but what you could land on is a starter at 30. And this team needs some starters on defense. So you'd rather take the gamble at 10, where you've not been successful at, especially in defense. You've not been successful. And you want to take the gamble at 10 with a DB that they've stunk out loud with, or a edge rusher that they've been marginally successful at. They overdrafted a defensive lineman a year ago. This shows you their trend. This is the behavior of the team. This is their operation. This is how they see things. This is 3 decades of how they draft. This is not an opinion. This is not an opinion. This is who all you have to do is go and add them up. Anyone can do it. So again, I'm going to ask this topic. I think there's 2 players at 10 that can help your football team today. Tone said this the other day. Hey, man, if I get 5 years out of you and you blow your knee out or something happens and you win a Super Bowl, it's worth the investment. I got 2 guys here. What player will help the Eagles most? And by the way, I don't give a shit about 2025. I don't care about 2024. I care about 2023 because that's the last year that you have with Jalen on his rookie contract. You better take full advantage of that. I told you, the Eagles have a 2-year window before they start having to make really radical decisions on money and a ton of restructuring. Last year was one of them. That's what made the Super Bowl loss so criminal, that they lost that game. That was one of the best constructed rosters I've ever seen. What player helps the Eagles the most in 2023? Jalen Carter or Bijan Robinson? John says, having a rough day at work. Chin up, brother. Chin up, please. Just showing appreciation for your content. Go get BJ. Let's outscore teams. I like it. I like it. I like it, John. Who helps your team today? Bijan Robinson or Carter? The Eagles need to be right at 10 if they're going to stay at 10. Dude, anybody else, if these 2 players are not there, I'm out. I'm out at 10, and I go to the highest bidder. I go to the highest bidder. Who wants the 10th pick? I'll take first rounders, and I'll take second and thirds. CZ says Carter. Based on the 2023 season, Carter. Jason, Will Anderson and Jalen Carter are the 2 best players in this draft. They're the 2 best players in this draft. Okay? Hey, Ray, Cansey at 30. Okay? That's a value pick, not a 10. I'm not taking the kid from Pitt at 10. Carter is the most talented with questions. BJ is solid all around. Let me tell you this. Lat Inferno. Let me say this to you. I want Jalen Hurts to play 10 years. Do you know what the reports are with Jalen Hurts now? Get this. Here's the reports. Peter King told me this morning. You want to hear? Should I tell you guys what Clutch Sports is doing with the Eagles? Or should I save that for the top? I think I'll save that for the top. Remind me, please. I'll tell you what Clutch is doing. Hurts. Contract. Top. And I talked to the agent of the other player about coming on, so you're going to know what – I already know what Hurts' contract looks like. I got a template of the one that they're going to try to emulate without the numbers. I don't know this one particular player's numbers, but I got the template. I already know what Hurts' contract looks like. I don't know the money. I don't want to put that out there, but I know what the framework is. Let me finish this topic up here first. Boy, Robinson helps Hurts out so much. Takes the carries away. Hey, takes the carries away. Takes the pressure off the run game. He's what I don't want to have. Hey, what I don't want to have, I don't want Jalen Hurts to be the best running back on my football team. I want it to be, dude, the best player for the Eagles to take is Robinson at 10. Jalen Carter, man, it'd be a tough pass for me because he'd be the second player and the second best player. And then I get a player like that on my team next to Jordan Davis. Can you imagine? You might actually have 3 Bulldogs playing in the middle of your defense for the next decade, maybe. Whew. Gibbs is nothing near Bijan Robinson. Not even remotely close. He's a good player. He's not close to that. I would never go to Gibbs at 10. I say, God, man, Carter or Robinson? Carter's the better player. Man, I thought about I'm coming on the air, I'm still struggling with it. I'm still struggling with it. Carter or Robinson at 10? What's the best for the team? Who makes the biggest impact in 2023? If I had both these guys, no one else matters. I don't give a shit about those DBs and safeties and old linemen. If I got these 2 guys to choose from, and then I got people in my ear going, I'll give you first rounder. Would you take these 2 players or would you take the picks? For me to trade out of that, and those 2 players are there, you'd have to give me a first rounder. If Carter and Robinson are at 10, and a team comes to me and says, I'll give you a 1 next year for him, for that pick, I'd be like, I want a 1, 2, and 3. And I want the 2 and 3 in this year's draft. I'll take the 1 next year. Ray, to go from 30 to 10, you'd have to surrender more than giving up the 10th pick. That's too high a climb. You'd almost have to give your entire 23 draft away to get from 30 to 10. And you would have to probably give up the 10th pick is the volume pick and the pricey pick. And it's the highest game. The Eagles can't miss. They can't miss at 10. You're in a position now. I don't think you get it. because the quarterback has to be paid. You have to be like Kansas City and get all those great young rookie players starting. Do you know what the advantage Kansas City had? They got rid of Honey Badger and put 2 starters at corner and won the Super Bowl. What? Tease, thank you. Okay? No, I mean trade 30 and 10 for 5. Whew. Dude, there's not a guy in this draft that makes me want to do that. I'm not overwhelmed by anybody in this draft except for Carter and Will Anderson. The rest of them, man, you guys look at this draft and go like this. Holy shit. Man, this thing is loaded. Do you do that? I mean, do you like see Randy Moss in this draft? Like, do you see the 1983 draft here? Do you see that? I don't. Why would I trade up to get to 5 when I'm looking at maybe 15 good players and 2 exceptional players? I would say this to you, your top 5 dudes, Anderson, Carter, Bijan Robinson, the kid Skornowski, and maybe Wilson, the kid from Tech. You know? I think you can quality picks in the 2nd and 3rd. Shepard, what you're doing in the 2nd and 3rd, and by the way, I'll tell you guys, the guy that I was schooled for the draft, there was a guy by the name of Ken Herrick and Ron Wolf and Jimmy Johnson and Bob Ackles. Those guys, I got a chance to sit in draft rooms and watch those guys, and Al Davis and all those guys work. I got a chance to sit in the Raider draft for like 4 years. And I watched Ken Herrick and Ron Wolf work in that room with Morris Bradshaw. And I watched how they evaluated and how they manipulated a board. And then I watched Jimmy do it. And Jimmy always looked at – have you guys ever seen the Jimmy Johnson value chart that he developed that every team uses today? We're going to have Jimmy on we always have him on during draft week. And he's got a draft chart. He's got a value pick. You know why he never fails in the draft? Because he goes by value. What's the best value pick for my team? He doesn't give it's Holy Week. He doesn't give a shit what your name is on the back of your jersey. He doesn't care what school you went to. Are you a value pick? Jalen Carter, 10, and the running back out of Pittsburgh, 30. No way. Not interested at all in that kid. I think he's better than – okay, well, again, Eagle Way, we'll find out soon when he gets into the league. I didn't see that. Now, I would say this to you, Eagle Way. The school that you're in, Curtis Martins of the world, LaShawn McCoys, Tony Dorsett's, the guys that have come out of that program, Pitt's an exceptionally talented, rich history in having talented kids come out of that program. So you're in the right Pennsylvania school. Pittsburgh is the best talent for the NFL between Penn State and Pittsburgh. Penn State wins more games and more notable games, but Pitt is the NFL factory. Penn State, not so much. Pittsburgh has had legend. If you put an all-time Pitt team together versus an all-time Penn State team, it wouldn't be close of Hall of Famers. Wouldn't be close. Grimm, Freilich, go down the list. Marino, Dorsett, the guy who played wide receiver in Arizona, Dolman, Hugh Green, Ricky Jackson, Tony Saraguso. I mean, Pittsburgh has put together some of the greatest players in the history of the sport. Darrelle Revis, Aaron Donald. Pitt is a better machine for the NFL than Penn State. Do you see Carter getting passed by Seattle? I think Seattle's going to go quarterback. I think they signed Geno to a 2-year contract, and I think they're going to take a quarterback there. Watson, okay, I'll take Pitt's NFL guys. There's not a guy you could name from Penn State that I couldn't beat you with from Pitt. No one. No one. Oh, hey, I'm sorry about that, guys. You know what's funny? Tone, I can't answer this question yet. Man, Carter or Robinson? I'll answer it on the other side. And I'll tell you what Jalen Hurts is doing with the Eagles and Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie and how his contract is going to look. We'll do that next. Jason Cole is going to join us at 4:30. By the way, I need your help with Jason. We're trying to get Eric Allen in the Hall of Fame. We just had Rick Gosselin on. Okay? Let's continue to make that push. Since nobody else in Philly's doing it, we will. I want Eric Allen in the Hall of Fame, or at least I want Eric Allen to be debated. Is that fair? At the next meetings. I want him on that list. He's not even on the freaking list yet. I'm going to get him on that list. Okay? I need your help. I want to do that. We're going to do all that in hour number 2. Hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.